Welcome back to Crazy Simple. I am Dr. Christopher Taylor,
And I am Lori Vann.
and we are going to try to host this show.
Sounds like a plan.
Let's do it. What do we got today?
Well, recent studies came out, published by the CDC, about suicide rates. So during this time of year, it's something that does need to be discussed because, well, changes in the weather and the holiday season often bring up depression.
Yeah, this is true. Depression is a difficult time during the holiday season, during the winter months. It is a difficult place to be.
So today we want to talk a little bit about the statistics that have come up and bring awareness to the topic and also provide some maybe crazy simple solutions to sometimes a complex problem and hopefully inspire and provide some hope.
So give us some stats.
Well, suicide rates have been rising in the U.S. for the past several decades. And as a clinician, I know you have as well. You've seen it. We've seen this increase, so much so that the U.S. Surgeon General has, issued this epidemic that this is something that really needs major attention. And we know that men complete 4 times more often than females. And while there is some, hope in the sense of some of the stats have decreased among 10 to 14-year-olds. So now it's 2 out of every 100,000 deaths, which to me, that's too many for 10 to 14-year-olds to really take that in. And we've also seen a 9% decrease in 15-year-olds to 24-year-olds. There's been a fall in that, which again, still that's, something we have to address. But we have seen an increase in women that are not only attempting but completing. And of course, that's of concern.
Interesting. So mixed news, I guess.
Yes.
So good news with preteens and teens, sounds like. And then bad news for women. And, I guess guys we're neutral there, I guess.
Well, still one of the highest numbers of those that are going in that path are white males that are older in age. Now, how you define senior population is maybe a little bit, open because, 40 isn't 40 anymore. And, how we see different age groups is a little bit changed, but let's just say they're probably talking in that 60 plus category.
Okay. So I've still got a few more years.
So a few more.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Oh, but one thing that, and your thoughts on this, of maybe some of those are underreported, that maybe some are being ruled as accidents that may in fact not have been accidents, but for insurance purposes or for maybe it's a little bit smaller town and concerns about image, that things were ruled a little differently. So I would encourage people, take the stats with a little bit of a grain of salt, because most likely those are underreported numbers.
Yeah, and that is always sad to see. Definitely understand why you wouldn't want to report it that way, but there is no stigma. There is no shame.
Now, they use the term self-harm. And so since non-suicidal self-injury is my area of expertise, that's one thing to clarify is some of the terminology is sometimes self-harm is used interchangeably with self-injury, and sometimes self-harm means suicide. And it even depends on the country that you're in. So in the United States, it's used pretty interchangeably, but in other countries, they may use self-harm strictly in context of suicide, or they may use self-harm as self-injury.
Right.
So you always want to look at the context of the article and to clarify that there's a difference between the two of them. And it's really important to understand there is a difference between suicidal thoughts and attempts versus non-suicidal self-injury, which is a coping skill. It's not a great coping skill, but it is a coping skill. And that, you don't want to put someone inpatient because they might be engaging in self-injury. You always, always, always want to check the intent behind the act.
Yeah, that's right. And those are good points to bring up as well, Lori. Is I always hear people say that maybe they don't want to talk about it because they're afraid they're going to get put in a loony bin or something, which, I mean, sure, that's a risk, but the bigger risk is not talking. Because if you're not talking about how you feel, you're not talking about your concern, then you're not going to get any better. You're not going to be able to work on it. But when you hear a friend talk about maybe concerns of driving into oncoming traffic, or just wishing that that everything would just go away or something like that, does not mean that they are having active suicidal thoughts. It's okay to talk to somebody about this. It's okay to ask hard questions, challenging and tough questions. The big driver is getting the conversation started. Once we have the conversation going, now we have options.
Absolutely. And it's understanding. So when I do suicide assessments, I always talk about being on a continuum.
Mm-hmm.
And we start off with passive, which, quite frankly, I don't think anyone, at least in the United States, escapes having passive thoughts at some point in their life, because it's the world we live in and we experience traumas and bad things happen. But passive thoughts are not active. Passive could be the, hey, if I happen to get struck by lightning today, cool. I'm cool with that. That's not grounds to go to the hospital. Now, if it seems to be happening more frequently, and maybe we move into what we call active thoughts, where you're thinking about several times a week, and maybe you're really starting to go, what would it be like? Then, yeah, I'm going to encourage you, maybe seek some guidance from a professional to further discuss that. Again, still not saying that's grounds for going to the hospital. And then we move into the planning stage, and that could be everything from, well, really theoretically, how am I going to do this, to maybe gathering the tools, maybe writing the letter. Still not intent, but it's coming together a little bit more. And then there's, to me, the final stage of its intent. And even if someone doesn't have a real solid plan, they know they are going to be doing something. And that obviously is the most serious concern, that absolutely you've got to talk to someone about that. Because there is help out there. There is hope. You don't have to be in that state.
That is absolutely right. So let's back up a little bit. What do you think is driving the decrease for preteens and teens, and what do you think is driving the increase for adult women?
Well, I work a lot with tweens and teens, and I know that schools seem to be trying to implement more programs, whether that's the Hope Squad, Journey of Hope. There's several great organizations out there bringing awareness to students, the administrative staff becoming more trained. I know that I present to school districts on self-injury and on suicide, training up staff members and presenting to students on the topic and how to discuss it. And so I think that's been a big turnaround. I think that primary doctors are doing more assessments for it, which is fantastic. And maybe because teens are a little bit more comfortable having those discussions, this generation seems much more open to discussing mental health than other generations. And for the increase in women, I don't know if I can pinpoint something. I think there's just, maybe generally speaking, don't jump my butt on this, it's a generalization, but women tend to be more stuffers. They tend to be more martyrs. They tend to be I can just put on the happy face and I can keep persevering even though I'm crumbling inside. And females tend to be more caretakers. And if you have women that are in what we call the sandwich generation, where they're stuck between kiddos and then taking care of their parents as they're aging, that is a huge amount of stress to deal with.
So much stress. Far more stress than old white guys. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what's happening over there. Way more stress than those people. I don't know what that's about. So big shout out to our friends at Grant Halliburton Foundation, a wonderful nonprofit that supports the Hope Squad. They fund those programs and help bring those Hope Squads into each school, and have seen remarkable increase in awareness, in mental health discussion, in transparency and vulnerability, and following that education and connection. Each of those schools have reported massive decreases. Some of those schools have dropped to 0% suicide attempts or completions because of those peer-to-peer programs. So those are amazing programs. I think definitely a big part of it. I also wonder how big of a part social media has played in the advance of suicide in preteen and teen boys and girls. In 2009, Instagram became available on your smartphone as an app. And that is the first year where we began really, truly monitoring preteen suicide for the first time in history, as it jumped a radical amount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the movie The Social Dilemma that Netflix put out is, to me, an excellent documentary. And if you have kids in your life, I really strongly encourage you to sit down with them and watch it, because it's eye-opening. But there's a psychologist that they interviewed, and he talked about the hockey stick, the sharp increase of self-injury and suicides that happen with the opening up of social media. And you can see this direct increase with Facebook. And now we know Zuckerberg's been interviewed by Congress and others in regards to Facebook's role and teen mental health decline and the influence of suicide and eating disorders and all sorts of things. And so even though Facebook now is the old person's social media, I would say it also applies to Instagram and to TikTok and to...
Speaking of which, Google is calling Lori right now.
Yeah, they are listening. They are always listening.
They have something to say to us on this topic. Okay.
They're worried they're going to edit me. They're like, what are you talking about?
You should have answered it. You're live on the air. Terrible.
But,
well, I guess that makes sense with older white males completing suicide more now that it's the old person's social media. That's terrible. That's terrible. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's but it's true. If you look at the demographics of who is actively using Facebook, it tends to be those in that 35 and older category. There are some that are in their 20s that maybe they're using it just for sake of their parents are on there, or former colleagues or business colleagues of theirs. But yeah, I mean, Snapchat is another one. There's so many out there to be aware of. And while social media, to give them some credit, they have tried to monitor some of the content. And if you do see concerns, they have options for you to flag it. And theoretically, a human is going to review it, which is not the case. I have stories of that, of some of my television interviews on self-injury that got pulled after being on there for 5 years on YouTube. So there's that, but they are trying, it seems, a little bit better to flag that content.
It seems that way. Well, so what do you think is some simple solutions for this? Well, what are some things that people can do now to help get in front of this epidemic?
Well, education is first and foremost. The more educated you are about the topic, the more comfortable you are speaking on it and approaching someone. And if you're not quite sure how to approach someone, then speak with a professional and get some tips, get some guidelines. You can even meet with a professional for one appointment to do a role play of how to express your concerns to your loved one. But if you think something might be there, don't try to dismiss it as, oh, I'm overreacting, I'm overthinking this. It's much better to always err on the side of caution than to have regrets. And even if the person you go, oh, they're going to be so ticked off, quite honestly, I'd rather have them mad versus dead.
Yep. Yep, I agree with that. I'd rather you be upset with me and never talk to me again versus dead. That's kind of where I stand on that. And if you don't want to be my friend because of that, then that's fine. But there was a really interesting analogy I heard the other day of talking to somebody, an older parent. There's a new TV show or a movie on Netflix called Older Dads or Old Dads. It's basically about guys that were, like in their late 40s, early 50s that were just now having kids for the first time.
Ooh.
And so it was very rub your dirt on it kind of attitude. So it was a really funny movie. But one of the things that really I realized coming out of that, watching that movie, was that these dads who would teach their kids how to ride their bike the way that their dad taught them how to ride their bike, or they would teach them how to drive a car the way their dad taught them how to drive a car, now get to social media and have no idea what to do because it wasn't around when our parents were in high school. It wasn't a thing when our parents were dating. I mean, they didn't have phones in their pockets. They didn't have cameras in every pocket. So it's a big change. So I know it's a difficult thing. It can be a very challenging thing to talk to kids about, especially if you are older and you have younger kids. It can seem impossible because you don't know what's going on there. So I think education is very important. I think connection is extremely important. I think knowing that you're not alone is important. And really, the crazy simple thing is just talk. It's just talk. It might seem silly. It might seem useless, but I will tell you this: if you are talking to that person, they are not killing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So keep talking to people. You're not going to say the wrong thing. I know a lot of people get worried about that. They get worried about, well, I don't know what to say, or I don't want them to leave the conversation feeling like they should, or something like that. It's not your responsibility. If you go in there with an open ear and a pure heart, and you're just there to help, just listen. Mostly, all you need to do is listen. You don't really have to say a whole lot. So I think the crazy simple solution here is just connecting, being open, being vulnerable, listening.
Yep, absolutely agree. Do more listening than speaking. Really be present for them, and don't try to get 3 steps ahead thinking, oh, how am I going to respond to this? And if you don't know the answer to something, it's okay to say you don't know, but that you will try to find out.
All right, and with that, I am Dr. Christopher Taylor.
And I am Lori Vann.
And this is Crazy Simple.